I always thought the worst kind of pain was losing someone you love. But I was wrong. The real pain comes when you realize the person you trusted most has been lying to you, right in front of your face, for months. It started with the little things. And isn't that always how it begins? The small excuses, the subtle changes, the moments that don't seem like much until you look back and realize they were signs. Signs that something was breaking under the surface. At first, I ignored it, because that's what you do when you love someone. You tell yourself they're busy. You tell yourself you're imagining things. You tell yourself that the pit in your stomach is just stress or paranoia, or your mind playing tricks on you. But deep down, my gut was screaming. And I've learned the hard way that the gut is almost always right. I remember one night in particular. He came home late, later than usual. He smelled faintly of cologne, but not his. It wasn't the kind I'd ever bought for him, not the kind I'd ever smelled on his skin before. I asked him about it, casually, pretending I wasn't watching every flicker of his expression. He laughed it off, said a coworker sprayed something in the office and it must have rubbed off. But his eyes told me another story. They darted away just a fraction too quickly. His smile held, but the corners of his mouth trembled. He was lying. I knew it. I could feel it in my bones. The next day, I tried to push it aside, tried to go about my life as if nothing had happened. But once suspicion worms its way into your heart, it doesn't let go. It eats at you, whispering doubts into every silence, into every unanswered text, into every late arrival. He started keeping his phone closer, always face down on the table, always in his pocket when before he'd leave it charging on the counter. When I walked into the room, he'd tilt the screen away, quick flicks of his thumb locking it instantly. "Work emails," he said once when I caught him typing furiously at midnight. "Deadlines, you know how it is." And I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. Because believing him meant keeping my world intact. Believing him meant I could keep living in the story we had built together, the story where we were happy, where we were partners, where love was enough. But love wasn't enough. Not anymore. I started noticing patterns. He suddenly cared about his appearance more. Fresh haircuts every 2 weeks, new shirts, a different cologne. He said he wanted to look professional, but something in me screamed that it wasn't about work. One night, while he was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with just a name, unknown number. My heart hammered in my chest. I stared at it, frozen, every instinct telling me to grab it, to open it, to uncover the truth. But I didn't. Not yet. Because some part of me wasn't ready for confirmation. Do you know what it's like to live in that limbo? To suspect, to almost know, but not have proof? It's like walking on a tightrope with fire burning below. Every smile feels fake. Every touch feels like a lie. You want to scream, but you stay silent, because silence feels safer than hearing the truth. But silence is its own kind of torture. The breaking point, though, was simpler than you'd imagine. A dinner. Just an ordinary dinner. I had cooked his favorite meal, spaghetti with homemade sauce. I set the table, lit candles, even poured wine. I was trying to pull us back to what we used to be. He walked in, glanced at the table, and sighed. Actually sighed, like it was a burden. He sat down, poked at the food, and muttered that he wasn't hungry. That he'd already eaten. At 9 o'clock at night. "Where?" I asked, my voice steady, though my hands were shaking under the table. "Just grabbed something after work," he said casually, as if that explained everything. But the truth was there in his tone, dripping with carelessness. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I stared at him across the flickering candlelight, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't stress. This was betrayal. And for the first time, instead of breaking down, I felt something else. A cold, steady fire. I didn't confront him that night. No, that would have been too easy for him. Instead, I smiled. I nodded. I cleared the table quietly, all the while my mind racing. Because if he thought he could lie to me for months, If he thought he could tear down everything we had built without consequences, then he was gravely mistaken. This was the beginning of the end, and he didn't even see it coming. But I did. And from that night on, every word he spoke, every excuse he gave, I memorized. Every slip, every detail, every inconsistency, I stored them all away like puzzle pieces. Because I wasn't just his partner anymore. I was the storm he never saw coming. Before everything unraveled, before the lies stacked so high they suffocated me, there was a time when I believed in him completely. And maybe that's the cruelest part of all, remembering how perfect it once seemed. We met the way so many ordinary love stories begin, by chance. I wasn't looking for anything serious. He wasn't either, or so he claimed. But there was something about his laugh, the ease with which he carried himself, the way he made everyone around him feel like they mattered. That was what pulled me in. He had this presence that turned heads, but he saved his softest smiles for me. At first, I told myself not to fall too hard. I had been hurt before, and I wasn't eager to repeat the past. But he didn't just knock down my walls. He made me believe they didn't need to exist. He was attentive. He listened when I spoke, remembered small details, and surprised me with things I'd only mentioned once in passing. If I said I liked a certain kind of coffee, the next morning it was waiting on the counter. If I admired a book, it somehow found its way into my hands a week later. We weren't perfect, of course. No couple ever is. But the way we handled our differences made me believe we were stronger than most. He had patience, or at least he pretended to. And in those days, I was too blinded by love to notice the little cracks forming at the edges. Our friends admired us. "You two are goals," they'd say. Family gatherings were easier because of him. He was charming, polite, quick with a joke that had everyone laughing. My parents adored him. My siblings trusted him. To the outside world, we were steady, solid, unshakable. And I basked in that image. I let it comfort me. I let it convince me that I'd finally found someone who was different. Someone who wouldn't betray me. Someone who meant it when he said forever. I look back now and I realize how naive that was. But when you're in the middle of it, when you're wrapped in the glow of what feels like true love, you don't see the shadows creeping in. You don't notice how the things you praise in someone can be the same tools they later use against you. His attentiveness became secrecy. His charm became manipulation. His patience, nothing more than a mask. Still, I can't deny that there were beautiful moments. Weekend getaways where it was just us, no distractions. Lazy Sundays spent cooking together in the kitchen, music playing, laughter spilling into the air. Nights where we'd dream about the future. Buying a house, starting a family, building a life together. He painted those pictures so vividly that I held on to them like they were promises carved in stone. That's why the lies cut so deep. Because they didn't just shatter the present, they poisoned the past. Every memory I had with him now came with a question mark. Was that laugh genuine? Was that compliment real? Was that moment truly ours? Or was he already betraying me in silence? And I can't lie, I still remember the exact moment I told myself, this is it. This is the man I'll spend the rest of my life with. It was during a trip. We were standing on a cliff overlooking the ocean, the waves crashing against the rocks below. He slipped his arm around me, pulled me close, and whispered, "No matter what, it's you and me." And I believed him. Every word. Those words echoed in my head later when I found out the truth. They haunted me, like ghosts of a promise broken. The introduction of our love story matters because it explains why I fought so hard to deny my suspicions, why I doubted myself instead of him, why I stayed silent even when the evidence was piling up, because I wasn't just holding on to him, I was holding on to the story we had written together. A story I thought would last a lifetime. But stories, no matter how beautiful, can be rewritten. And sometimes they need to be. That's what he never understood. He thought his lies would stay hidden, buried under my trust. He thought I'd cling to the image of perfect, no matter how much it hurt me. But he underestimated one thing. Me. Because when the foundation cracked, when the truth started seeping through, I didn't crumble the way he expected. I didn't look the other way. I started watching. I started remembering. I started piecing it all together. And once I saw the truth, there was no unseeing it. If someone had looked at our life from the outside, they'd say we were the perfect couple. The house was warm, tidy, and filled with laughter. We went to dinners with friends, smiled in family photos, and celebrated anniversaries with flowers and late-night toasts. To everyone else, it looked solid, stable, happy. And for a while, I let myself get lost in that performance. Because that's exactly what it was. A performance. In the daylight, we lived like nothing was wrong. He kissed me goodbye in the mornings before work. He sent quick texts during lunch breaks, things like, "Hope your day is going well," or "Can't wait to see you tonight." He'd walk through the door in the evenings, hang his coat, and ask about my day with just enough sincerity to keep me from cracking. On weekends, we kept traditions alive. Movie nights on Fridays, brunch at the little cafe downtown on Sundays. We laughed at old jokes, traded stories, even planned vacations that, deep down, I knew would never happen. Because while we played out this picture-perfect act for the world, behind closed doors, the cracks were widening. The truth is, I wanted to believe in that facade. I wanted to sink into it and forget what my instincts were screaming at me. I clung to routines like lifelines. If we were still doing all the things happy couples did, then maybe I was wrong. Maybe he wasn't lying. Maybe the late nights and the secrecy had innocent explanations. But the heart knows. The heart always knows. It was the subtle differences that gave him away. The way his laughter no longer reached his eyes. The way his hugs felt slightly more distant, as though he was holding part of himself back. The way his phone buzzed and he'd excuse himself, stepping into another room with the excuse of taking a work call. And yet, when we were around others, he was flawless, attentive, affectionate, the man everyone envied. I watched my friend's eyes linger on us with admiration, whispering, "You're so lucky to have him." I smiled, nodded, and played along, all the while wondering if luck had anything to do with it, or if I was just the fool in the story. At dinners, he'd squeeze my hand under the table, telling some charming anecdote that had everyone laughing. At weddings, he'd spin me around the dance floor, looking into my eyes as though we were the only two people in the world. And for a few stolen moments, I let myself believe it. Because believing the lie was easier than confronting the truth. But the lie was heavy. It weighed on me in small, crushing ways. I started losing sleep. I'd wake up at 2 a.m, heart pounding, staring at the empty space beside me in bed. He'd be working late again, his side of the mattress cold. I'd lie there in the dark, wondering who he was really with, wondering what he was really doing. I tried to talk to him once. I asked gently if everything was okay, if he was happy. He gave me the softest smile, kissed my forehead, and said, "Of course I am. Don't be silly." His tone was kind, but dismissive, and it shut the door before I could even open it. So I stopped asking. Instead, I watched. And as I watched, I realized that the facade wasn't just for others. It was for me, too. He was feeding me just enough affection, just enough normalcy to keep me from pulling at the threads. A kiss here, a compliment there, small gestures that reminded me of the man I once loved. But they weren't real anymore. They were distractions, carefully placed to buy him time. The strangest part? I became complicit in my own betrayal. I smiled at family dinners. I posted pictures of us online, captioning them with words like forever and lucky. I let the world see a story that no longer existed, because I wasn't ready for the alternative. And yet, deep down, I was preparing, collecting, observing. I started noticing where he said he was versus where he actually was. Little inconsistencies, times that didn't add up, stories that contradicted themselves. Like when he told me he had a late meeting at work, but his jacket smelled faintly of smoke, and no one in his office smoked. Or when he claimed he was grabbing drinks with coworkers, but I saw a charge on our bank account from a restaurant across town, one we'd never been to together. Each piece was small, but together, they started to paint a picture I could no longer ignore. And still, I kept the mask on. I laughed at his jokes. I let him hold my hand in public. I played my role in the happy couple theater we had built. Because I knew something he didn't. I knew that the truth was on its way to the surface. And when it finally did, It would shatter more than just the facade. It would shatter him. For now, I let him think he was safe. For now, I let him play his part. Because sometimes, the best way to destroy a lie is to let it grow so big, so bold, that it collapses under its own weight. And that's exactly what I was waiting for. On the surface, everything looked perfect. To the outside world, we were the couple everyone envied. Friends would often say things like, "You two are the definition of relationship goals." And for a while, I almost believed it myself. Our mornings started with shared coffee in the kitchen. He'd smile, kiss me on the forehead, and say he couldn't wait to see me later. We had dinners at our favorite little restaurant, the one with soft lights and that old piano in the corner. On weekends, we'd walk hand in hand through the park, laughing at inside jokes no one else would ever understand. I told myself, this is it. This is happiness. I convinced myself that the little moments of doubt were nothing but my own insecurities creeping in. He was attentive, charming, and always seemed so present. Or so I thought. But here's the thing about facades. They're built to hide cracks. And no matter how carefully you paint over them, the cracks eventually show. At first, the changes were subtle. His phone was always face down on the table. When it buzzed, he'd pick it up instantly, saying it was just work. He started staying late at the office, coming home with excuses about deadlines and demanding clients. I didn't want to question him too much. Part of me was afraid of what I might hear if I did. I told myself, don't be paranoid. Don't ruin what you have with needless suspicion. But deep down, my gut whispered a different story. One evening, I decided to surprise him. I cooked his favorite dinner, set the table with candles, and even opened a bottle of wine we'd been saving for a special occasion. I wanted to remind us both of what we had, but he came home late. He looked tired, distracted, and oddly guilty. When I showed him the table, he smiled, but his eyes didn't match the smile. He gave me a quick hug and mumbled something about being starving, but I couldn't shake the coldness in his touch. That night, while he showered, I glanced at his phone on the nightstand. For a moment, I thought about picking it up, unlocking it, searching for the truth. But I stopped myself. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to face the possibility that everything I believed in might be a lie. Still, the doubts grew. He started wearing cologne more often, even on days when he claimed he had no meetings. He bought new clothes, saying it was just for work. And then, there were the unexplained weekends. Business trips that never made sense, where he'd return with vague stories. And a phone battery that was somehow always dead during the trip. I kept asking myself, am I imagining this? Am I overthinking? But every time he avoided my eyes, every time he brushed off my questions, it felt like another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. The happy facade was starting to crack, and though I tried desperately to patch it, I knew deep down that the truth was waiting for me on the other side. And here's the cruel part. Even as I began to suspect the betrayal, I still clung to the good moments. The smiles, the kisses, the memories of when things were real. I held on to them because letting go meant admitting that the life I thought I had was nothing but a performance. But the performance was coming to an end. I just didn't know it yet. The perfect picture we had painted together was starting to blur. What once felt solid began to feel shaky, like walking across a bridge you suddenly realize might not hold your weight. At first, I brushed off the signs. A missed call here, a late text reply there, small things, the kind of things anyone could excuse. But it's funny how little cracks turn into gaping holes when you start paying attention. One evening, he came home later than usual. I had been sitting in the living room, pretending to watch TV, though my eyes hadn't left the clock in over an hour. When the door finally opened, he walked in carrying a bag that didn't look like it came from work. It was a sleek little gift bag, the kind with tissue paper sticking out. "Oh, what's that?" I asked casually, my voice steady though my heart was racing. He froze for a moment, just a second too long. Then he smiled, that practiced, easy smile of his. "Oh, this? Just something a coworker gave me, office appreciation thing." I nodded, but inside I knew. His answer was too quick, too rehearsed. And the way he shoved the bag into his study before I could even peek inside, it told me everything. Over the next few weeks, the tension grew. He became guarded with his phone, taking it everywhere, even into the bathroom, At night, I'd wake up to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, screen glowing against his face, fingers typing fast before he noticed me stirring and shoved it under the pillow. When I'd ask, "Who are you talking to?" he'd laugh it off. "Work, babe. Always work. You know how it is." But no matter how much he tried to convince me, my gut screamed louder with every lie. The fight started soon after. At first, small disagreements. "Why didn't you answer my call?" "I was busy." "Busy with what?" "Why do you always doubt me?" Every question I asked seemed to trigger anger. He'd snap, raise his voice, accuse me of being controlling. And instead of easing my fears, his reactions made me certain there was something he desperately wanted to hide. One night, after yet another argument, he stormed out of the house. I sat in the quiet, staring at the door he had slammed shut, feeling like the walls were caving in. That was the moment I realized I couldn't keep ignoring the truth. Online status board, and sometimes his name wasn't even listed. When he claimed he was out with coworkers, I'd notice how he'd come home with faint traces of perfume that didn't belong to me. The most painful part? The lies weren't even good anymore. He wasn't careful. He thought I wouldn't notice. Or maybe he thought I wouldn't dare to question him. And for a while, I didn't. Not out loud. But inside, the storm was building. I remember one particular night. We were sitting at dinner and I asked him, "Do you love me?" Just like that. Direct. He looked at me, startled, and for a moment his mask slipped. Then he said, "Of course I do. Why would you even ask that?" I forced a smile, nodded, and dropped the subject. But deep down, I knew. When someone loves you, you don't have to beg for reassurance. You feel it. And that night, all I felt was emptiness. The cracks were widening, and soon they would break wide open. I was done pretending, done being the only one fighting to keep us together. The man I thought I knew, the man I trusted with my heart, had become a stranger sitting across the table from me. And I had a decision to make. Would I keep living in denial, letting him play me for a fool? Or would I finally face the truth and take control of the story myself? The answer, I realized, was already clear. The cracks weren't just showing anymore. They were screaming for me to act. And I was ready. The night everything came crashing down wasn't extraordinary at first. In fact, it started off boring, quiet, forgettable, which almost makes what happened next feel even more like fate. He had told me he was working late again. Same excuse, same tired line. "Don't wait up." But this time, something in me snapped. I couldn't keep waiting, doubting, second-guessing. I needed the truth. So I grabbed my keys. The drive to his office felt endless. My hands gripped the wheel so tight, my knuckles turned white. Every red light made me wonder if I was crazy, if I was about to find nothing and embarrass myself. But my gut wouldn't let me turn back. When I finally pulled up to the office building, the parking lot was mostly empty. But then, I saw it. His car. Parked neatly in the far corner. He was here. I took a deep breath, stepped out, and headed inside. The lobby security guard nodded at me. He had seen me visit before. That helped. No questions asked. But when I reached his floor, the office lights were dim. Almost all the cubicles were dark, except one in the far corner. His, and he wasn't alone.
Through the glass walls, I saw him. Sitting close, far too close to her. A woman I recognized from his work events. They were laughing, whispering, their faces just inches apart. I froze, watching as his hand brushed hers, and then he leaned in. The kiss felt like a knife twisting straight into my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My world didn't just crack, it shattered. Somehow, I managed to step back before they saw me. My legs carried me down the hall, into the elevator, out to my car. I sat there, shaking, hands gripping the steering wheel, but this time not out of doubt, out of rage. Because now I knew there was no more guessing, no more excuses. He had lied, betrayed me, thrown away everything we had built for a secret affair in the shadows. And the worst part, he looked happy. Happier with her than he had with me in months. I drove home that night, numb, replaying every moment in my head. The late nights, the guarded phone, the sudden fights. It all made sense now. The puzzle pieces clicked into place, and the picture they revealed was one I had been too scared to see. When he walked through the door hours later, he wore that same fake smile. Long night at work, he sighed, tossing his bag down. I just nodded, pretending to believe him. Inside, though, I was screaming. The days that followed were torture. Every time he looked at me, every time he touched me, I felt the weight of his betrayal. I wanted to confront him right then and there, to shout, to demand answers. But I didn't. Not yet. Because something inside me whispered, wait, watch, plan. If I exposed him too soon, he'd twist it. He'd call me paranoid, accuse me of imagining things. But if I was patient, if I gathered the right proof, then he couldn't deny it, and I would have the power. So I became an actress in my own home. Smiling when I wanted to scream, cooking dinner when I wanted to throw his plate across the room, asking about his day while secretly noting every lie he told. I checked his phone when he was in the shower, screenshots, messages, late-night calls saved under fake names. Each discovery was another stab, but also another weapon I tucked away for later. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was emotional, deep. He had chosen her over me day after day, lie after lie, and he thought he could keep getting away with it. But what he didn't know was that I was building something far more dangerous than suspicion. I was building evidence. The night I finally confronted him is burned into my memory. We were sitting at the dinner table. He was rambling about overtime again, shoving food into his mouth like nothing was wrong, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Who is she?" I asked quietly. His fork froze mid-air. His eyes flicked up to mine. For the first time in months, he looked nervous. "What are you talking about?" I leaned forward, my voice steady. "The woman at your office. The one you've been seeing after work. The one you kissed." The color drained from his face. He stammered, searched for words, tried to laugh it off. "You're crazy. That's not..." I slid my phone across the table. Screenshots, photos, proof, silence. That was the moment the mask finally fell. He admitted it, though not with remorse. No, he tried to justify it. Said he felt unappreciated, that I didn't understand him anymore, that he never meant to hurt me. The excuses poured out like poison, and with each one, I felt my anger rise. Because none of it mattered. Not the reasons, not the apologies. Nothing could erase the image of him choosing her over me. The man I loved had betrayed me, and in that moment I realized I could never go back. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of my revenge. When the shock faded, anger moved in like a slow, deliberate tide. At first, it was hot and reckless, the kind that makes you want to shout and break things. But anger alone isn't strategy. If I wanted him to be truly speechless, to face the consequences of every lie, I needed something colder and smarter. I needed a plan. I told myself I wouldn't stoop to petty games. I wouldn't yell in public or make a scene that would make me look smaller. I wanted his exposure to be clean, undeniable, and final. I wanted the people who mattered, our friends, his co-workers, my family, to see him exactly as he was. No excuses, no smooth words, no second chances.
Through the glass walls, I saw him, sitting close, far too close, to her. A woman I recognized from his work events. They were laughing, whispering, their faces just inches apart. I froze, watching as his hand brushed hers. And then, he leaned in. The kiss felt like a knife twisting straight into my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My world didn't just crack, it shattered. Somehow, I managed to step back before they saw me. My legs carried me down the hall, into the elevator, out to my car. I sat there shaking, hands gripping the steering wheel, but this time not out of doubt, out of rage. Because now I knew. There was no more guessing, no more excuses. He had lied, betrayed me, thrown away everything we had built for a secret affair in the shadows. And the worst part? He looked happy. Happier with her than he had with me in months. I drove home that night numb, replaying every moment in my head. The late nights, the guarded phone, the sudden fights. It all made sense now. The puzzle pieces clicked into place, and the picture they revealed was one I had been too scared to see. When he walked through the door hours later, he wore that same fake smile. "Long night at work," he sighed, tossing his bag down. I just nodded, pretending to believe him. Inside, though, I was screaming. The days that followed were torture. Every time he looked at me, every time he touched me, I felt the weight of his betrayal. I wanted to confront him right then and there, to shout, to demand answers, but I didn't. Not yet. Because something inside me whispered, wait, watch, plan. If I exposed him too soon, he'd twist it. He'd call me paranoid, accuse me of imagining things. But if I was patient, if I gathered the right proof, then he couldn't deny it. And I would have the power. So I became an actress in my own home, smiling when I wanted to scream, cooking dinner when I wanted to throw his plate across the room, asking about his day while secretly noting every lie he told. I checked his phone when he was in the shower. Screenshots, messages, late-night calls saved under fake names. Each discovery was another stab, but also another weapon I tucked away for later. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was emotional, deep. He had chosen her over me, day after day, lie after lie, and he thought he could keep getting away with it. But what he didn't know was that I was building something far more dangerous than suspicion. I was building evidence. The night I finally confronted him is burned into my memory. We were sitting at the dinner table. He was rambling about overtime again, shoving food into his mouth like nothing was wrong. And I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Who is she?" I asked quietly. His fork froze mid-air. His eyes flicked up to mine. For the first time in months, he looked nervous. "What are you talking about?" I leaned forward, my voice steady. "The woman at your office. The one you've been seeing after work. The one you kissed." The color drained from his face. He stammered, searched for words, tried to laugh it off. "You're crazy. That's not..." I slid my phone across the table. Screenshots, photos, proof, silence. That was the moment the mask finally fell. He admitted it, though not with remorse. No, he tried to justify it, said he felt unappreciated, that I didn't understand him anymore, that he never meant to hurt me. The excuses poured out like poison. And with each one, I felt my anger rise. Because none of it mattered. Not the reasons, not the apologies. Nothing could erase the image of him choosing her over me. The man I loved had betrayed me. And in that moment, I realized I could never go back. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of my revenge. When the shock faded, anger moved in like a slow, deliberate tide. At first, it was hot and reckless, the kind that makes you want to shout and break things. But anger alone isn't strategy. If I wanted him to be truly speechless, to face the consequences of every lie, I needed something colder and smarter. I needed a plan. I told myself I wouldn't stoop to petty games. I wouldn't yell in public or make a scene that would make me look smaller. I wanted his exposure to be clean, undeniable, and final. I wanted the people who mattered, our friends, his co-workers, my family, to see him exactly as he was. No excuses, no smooth words, no second chances. So I started like a detective. I went through everything he touched with a quiet, patient intensity. I followed patterns instead of people. I cataloged every excuse, every unexplained absence, every charged dinner we never shared. I printed screenshots and copied messages into documents. I dated them, timestamped them. I made files that told a story line by line, night by night. There was something methodical about it that steadied me. I stopped being the hurt woman reeling from betrayal and became someone with a purpose. Each piece of evidence I found was an arrow notched toward the same target. First, I focused on financial tracks. Affairs leave footprints, transfers, mysterious withdrawals, restaurant charges, online gifts. I checked shared accounts for odd transfers. I compared statements. Where I couldn't access, I made careful notes of times and dates and cross-checked with his stories. A late meeting on a Friday night matched a charge at a cafe downtown. An early morning client that never existed matched unfamiliar hotel charges. Small things, but together they painted a pattern. Next, I gathered witnesses, subtle and safe. I started asking mutual friends casual questions about his work events. The ones who knew him well answered without thinking, and their offhand remarks gave me names of coworkers and places I hadn't known about. I made a list. I didn't confront anyone. I listened and let them talk. People reveal the truth without realizing it if you ask the right, careless question. Then I turned inward, to the most damning evidence of all, his phone. I'd already taken screenshots, but I knew a string of messages alone could be dismissed as contextless. So I built context. I mapped messages to times, to dinner dates, to weekends he said he was working. Where messages mentioned a date or place, I matched them with transaction records or photos. I printed the key screenshots, highlighted the lies, and arranged them into a narrative that couldn't be argued away. There was a risk in every move. He watched me, suspicious enough to raise his guard, but not enough to know what I was doing. I had to be careful with access. I copied files when he left his laptop unlocked for a moment. I saved receipts when I saw them in his coat pocket. I used passwords I'd known for years before they became secrets. It felt like betrayal from both sides, his deception and my invasion. But there's a difference between hiding the truth and unearthing it. I kept telling myself the difference mattered. I also planned the timing. Exposing someone is a performance as much as it is proof. If I did it alone in a dark room, it would be words against words. If I did it weeks from now when tempers cooled, he might spin a story. I needed a moment where witnesses were present, and the impact would be immediate. Work events turned out to be the perfect stage. He loved to perform. He loved colleagues who admired him. He also had a friend's engagement party coming up, a room full of his coworkers, our mutual friends, and my family all likely to be there. He would show up polished and confident, ready to hold court. If I could bring evidence in that setting, the contrast would be brutal and public. I pictured him smiling for photos while a folder on a table told the truth. But I didn't want to be reckless. Public humiliation can come back tenfold, and I had to protect myself legally and emotionally. I made backups of everything, hard copies, cloud copies, timestamps. I emailed a sealed summary to my closest friend with a note. If anything happens to me, or if I disappear, look here. It was dramatic, maybe, but it kept me safe and gave me the courage to move forward. Over the next 2 weeks, my life became a balancing act of normalcy and preparation. I played my role at home, calm, as if nothing had happened. I cooked dinner, asked about his day, laughed when he told his practice jokes. All the while I was assembling the dossier. I copied messages, organized receipts, printed bank statements. I wrote a concise narrative that started with "he lied" and ended with dates and names. There were moments of doubt. I'd lie awake at night and ask myself who I was becoming. Was I cruel? Was I vindictive? Part of me feared I'd cross a line and lose my own moral ground. But every time self-doubt crept in, I remembered the way he'd kissed that other woman, the way he'd chosen secrecy over honesty. I remembered the nights I had cried alone because he was absent in ways that mattered. That memory hardened my resolve. I rehearsed the confrontation in my head, not the shouting, but the revelation. Calm, factual, impossible to deny. I imagined sliding the stack of printed messages across a polished table, watching conversations stop mid-sentence. I imagined the way his face would go cold when his lies lost their shadows. I wanted his silence to be the sound of his credibility collapsing. A small, clever touch. I arranged for our evidence to be seen by people who would be impartial but respected. His manager, a mutual friend who couldn't be manipulated, and my own sister, someone I trusted to stand with me. Their reactions would serve as a mirror for everyone in the room. They would make denial harder to sustain. I also prepared the exit strategy. Revenge isn't about reveling endlessly in someone's ruin. That kind of malice eats you alive. It's about reclaiming your life. I packed an overnight bag with essentials, set aside a little cash, and arranged a place to stay with a friend if things went sideways. I made sure the practicalities were covered so that when the truth was out, I could walk away without carrying the wreckage. On the day of the engagement party, I felt a strange calm. The hours before felt like the quiet before a storm. I wore something neutral, nothing dramatic. I wanted the focus to land on the facts, not on theatrics. When we arrived, he moved through the room with his usual ease, shaking hands, laughing with colleagues, proud of the image he'd curated. I found the right moment, slipped the folder into my bag, and waited. When the speeches started, I felt my pulse steady. The plan had to unfold like a sequence. Wait for him to be relaxed, pull the thread, and then let the fabric of lies unravel in front of those who mattered. That night, when the time came, I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I walked up to him, stood where everyone could see, and asked a single quiet question that turned all heads. "Can we talk now?" The room stilled. I set the folder on the table between us and pushed it toward him. When people leaned in, when he went white and fumbled for an explanation that didn't exist, I felt the cold, steady victory of truth. His rehearsed smiles cracked. His words failed. And in that silence, everything shifted. I was prepared for consequences, breakups, accusations, an ugly scene. But I was also prepared to be free. I had built a trap of facts, not fury, and now it was time to let it close. And when it did so with a kind of quiet finality I had never expected. Clean, undeniable, and ultimately necessary. The room went silent the moment I slid the folder across the table. He blinked, confused at first, then cautious, then pale as his fingers touched the edge of the envelope like it might burn him. Around us, conversations faltered. A friend mid-laugh went quiet. His coworker leaned back, sensing tension. My sister's eyes flicked from me to him with sharp recognition. "Go ahead," I said, calm, almost too calm. "Open it." His jaw tightened. He gave a short, shaky laugh, like this was some kind of joke, like I was being dramatic. "Really? Here? What is this supposed to be?" "Proof," I answered simply. That word hung in the air like a bell toll. Proof. He hesitated, then opened the folder. Page after page stared back at him. Screenshots, receipts, call logs, photos. The story told itself. The smile fell from his face. His hands trembled as he turned one page, then another. I watched him, not with anger, but with a strange sense of detachment. This wasn't the man I had once loved. This was a stranger unraveling in front of me. The whispers started almost immediately. People craned their necks, trying to see. His coworker's wife whispered, "Oh my God." My sister raised her brows and crossed her arms, silently daring him to deny it. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for. He looked up at me, his face flushed and panicked. How could you?" This is private. Private. I cut him off, my voice steady but sharp. You made it public the moment you lied to me, to them, to everyone here. You didn't just betray me. You built your whole life on lies. I'm just showing the truth. He sputtered, searching for words. You don't understand. She means nothing. It wasn't. Don't, I said firmly. Don't stand here and insult everyone's intelligence with another lie. It's all there. The late nights, the hotel bills, the texts. You thought you were clever. You thought I'd never find out. The room had grown so quiet you could hear glasses clink on the far side of the hall. All eyes were on us. Some looked horrified. Some looked sympathetic. Some looked at him with disgust. And him? He looked small. For the first time, he wasn't the charming man in control. He was cornered, stripped of his rehearsed confidence, choking on the evidence that spoke louder than any excuse. He reached for my arm then, desperate. Please, not here, let's talk. I stepped back. No, we've talked enough. You had months to be honest. You chose lies. Tonight, I'm choosing truth. That was the breaking point. People began murmuring louder now, pieces of the puzzle clicking for them. His co-workers exchanged knowing glances, remembering all those late nights. My sister's expression hardened, and one of his closest friends muttered under his breath, unbelievable. The image he'd spent so long curating, reliable, loyal, respectable, was collapsing in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The woman from his office wasn't there, but her absence made no difference. Her name appeared enough in the messages to confirm everything. The humiliation wasn't just about me, it was about how he'd underestimated everyone else too. He thought no one would see. But now everyone did. He tried to save face, of course. This isn't fair. This is between us. I cut him off again. It stopped being just between us when you dragged another woman into our marriage, when you lied to every person in this room who thought they knew you. Don't you dare call this unfair? His mouth opened, then closed. He had nothing left. And here's the thing about silence. Sometimes it says more than words ever could. He sat there, exposed, unable to deny, unable to explain. And in that moment, I felt something unexpected relief. For months, I'd carried his secrets like weights chained to my chest. Now, the burden was gone. It wasn't mine anymore. It was his. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw drinks or cause chaos. I simply gathered my things, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "You wanted to live a lie. Live in it alone. We're done." And with that, I walked away. The whispers followed me as I crossed the room. Some people reached out, squeezing my arm in support. Others stared, stunned by the spectacle. But none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was that I had taken my power back. Behind me, I heard him calling my name, voice cracking, desperate. But I didn't turn around. Not once. That night, I stayed at a friend's house. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in silence, processing the surreal weight of what had just happened. For the first time in months, I slept without waking up to anxiety clawing at my chest. Because the truth was out. Because the lies were no longer my responsibility. Because he was finally the one left speechless. And the fallout? It came quickly. Word spread through his office like wildfire. The man who prided himself on his spotless reputation suddenly had whispers following him down hallways. Colleagues avoided his gaze. Invitations dried up. Even his closest friends started keeping their distance. My family, especially my sister, stood firmly with me. She called me brave, said I'd done what most people wouldn't dare. And maybe she was right. It hadn't felt brave at the time, it had felt necessary. But now, looking back, I could see it. I had refused to be silenced. As for him, he tried to salvage what he could. Apologies came in text messages, voicemails, even flowers left at my door. I made a mistake. I can change. Please, give me another chance. But you can't rebuild trust on a foundation of lies. No matter how many times he said he was sorry, the truth remained. He had chosen betrayal over and over again. And I had chosen myself. When people asked later if I regretted exposing him so publicly, my answer was always the same. No. Because betrayal thrives in the shadows. He counted on me staying quiet, on me protecting his image while I carried the pain. By pulling it into the light, I freed myself from that prison. The truth didn't just ruin him, it saved me. The morning after the reveal felt strangely quiet, the kind of quiet that follows a storm. I woke up in my friend's guest room, sunlight filtering through thin curtains. For a moment, I almost forgot everything that had happened. Then it all came back. The folder, the gasps, the way his face had fallen apart in front of everyone. But instead of dread, I felt lighter. For months, I'd lived in the shadow of suspicion, pretending everything was fine, silencing my own instincts. That weight was gone now, replaced with clarity, with air I could finally breathe. I poured myself coffee and sat at the kitchen table. My phone buzzed nonstop, missed calls, unread messages, voice notes I had no intention of opening. Some were from him, some from people who had witnessed everything. A few messages stood out. One from his co-worker, wife. I don't know how you stayed so calm last night. You're stronger than most people I know. Another from a family friend. You deserve better. Don't let him talk you back into anything. Proud of you. And then, my sister. I'll be by tonight. Wine's on me. We celebrate your freedom. No. I smiled at that one. My sister had been my quiet anchor throughout this nightmare. She'd seen the warning signs before I even admitted them to myself. Now, she was right there, reminding me that this wasn't the end. It was a beginning. He, on the other hand, was spiraling. The texts came in waves. Apologies, explanations, excuses. It didn't mean anything. You're blowing this out of proportion. I was stupid. Please, let's fix this. By the third day, desperation crept in. I can't lose you. Don't let this one mistake ruin everything. But it wasn't one mistake. It was dozens of choices, strung together with arrogance and deceit. And the only thing ruined was the illusion he had worked so hard to maintain. Here's the truth no one likes to admit. Betrayal isn't just about cheating. It's about disrespect. It's about erasing trust, taking someone's love for granted and assuming they'll never walk away. And I did walk away. Not with vengeance, not with bitterness, but with strength. Because revenge wasn't about screaming or destroying him. Revenge was letting the truth shine, then stepping aside to watch his own lies collapse around him. Weeks passed. He tried to rebuild his reputation, but people don't forget. The office whispers lingered. Friends stopped inviting him to gatherings. His perfect husband image was permanently fractured. Meanwhile, I began rebuilding myself. Therapy sessions helped me untangle the guilt I never should have carried. Long walks cleared my mind. Evenings with my sister reminded me that laughter could return, slowly but surely. Most of all, I learned that silence is dangerous. Silence protects liars. But truth? Truth protects you. One night, sitting with my sister, glass of wine in hand, she asked, "Do you ever regret doing it that way? In front of everyone?" I thought about it for a moment. The gasps, the whispers, his face crumbling. Then I shook my head. No. Because if I'd done it in private, he'd have spun it. He'd have denied, manipulated, twisted the story until I doubted myself again. At least this way, there was no hiding. Not from me, not from anyone. She raised her glass. To truth, then. I raised mine. To truth. And so, life moved on. I moved on. Not instantly, not without scars, but with a new sense of clarity. I began to trust myself again, trust the instincts I had ignored for too long. I also realized something important. Revenge doesn't always look like fire and fury. Sometimes revenge is calm. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, "Here's the truth," and walking away while they burn in the wreckage they created. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. 1. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't silence your gut to keep the peace. 2. Silence protects the wrong people. Speaking the truth may feel terrifying, but it sets you free. 3. Revenge doesn't have to be ugly. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is dignity, calm, walking away while the liar sits in the ruins of their own deception. 4. Your worth isn't tied to their choices. Their betrayal says everything about them and nothing about your value. 5. Healing takes time, but it's possible. The cracks don't mean you're broken, they mean you survived. Looking back now, I don't see that night as the end of something. I see it as the night I reclaimed myself, the night I proved, to him, to everyone, and most importantly to me, that I refused to live in someone else's lie. He lost control. He lost the respect of those around him. He lost me. And I found freedom, and that I realized was the sweetest revenge of all. And that's where my story ends. A journey through lies, betrayal, and the quiet strength it takes to rise above it all. If you've ever been in a situation where trust was broken, I hope this story reminds you that truth and dignity are far more powerful than any lie. If this story spoke to you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of betrayal, revenge, and resilience. Your support helps us keep telling these stories that matter, stories that remind us of the strength hidden inside us all. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place?